It's a special meeting of the Economic Development Authority for June 30th. And the first order of business is a roll call. So Matt, if you'll do the roll.
EDA President Bailey.
Here.
EDA Member Carey.
Here.
EDA Vice President Dennis.
Here.
EDA Member Myers.
Here.
EDA Member Pash. EDA Member Smoot.
Here.
EDA Member Theus.
Here.
All right, there we go. Next item on our agenda is approval of minutes. 3.1 is approval of the June 9th, 2020 EDA minutes. If there are no changes or corrections that are needed, I'll just need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes.
All right, so I have a motion by EDA Vice President Dennis.
I'll second.
Oh.
All right, I think I got EDA Member Carey. It's always fun with Zoom, isn't it? All right, no further discussion. So Matt, you want to do a roll on this one?
EDA President Bailey.
Yes.
EDA Member Carey.
Yes.
EDA Vice President Dennis.
Aye.
EDA Member Myers.
Yes.
EDA Member Smoot.
Yes.
EDA Member Theus.
Aye.
All right. So next on our agenda is business items. 4.1 is the Newport Midwest Project LLC project support. And we've actually seen this before, but we'll turn this over to, I don't know, Matt, are you taking it or is Christine? Oh, I guess it's Christine. Sorry if I just look at my notes.
That's okay. It's early. Good morning, EDA members. Before you is a project application from Newport Midwest LLC. They came before the City Council in May 15th, 2019 at a workshop. They presented a proposal for a 54-unit multifamily development at 7601 79th Street. This is slightly less than an acre. It's across the street from the library and just kind of catty corner from the former City Hall building that will become Grove 80 apartments. Proposing units at 30 and 50% of the area median income, which is considered workforce housing, which is defined as households earning incomes between 60 and 100% of the area median income. The Twin Cities family of 4 area median income is approximately a little over $103,000. As part of the project, they're applying to MHFA for a housing tax credit. The housing tax credit financing program is for residential rental properties that offers investors a reduction in tax liability in exchange for capital to build affordable rental housing. They applied for the 9% program, which is more competitive and often requires applying multiple times to receive funding. They did begin their application process to MHFA for the 9% in 2019. They did come before us in 2019 asking for a resolution of support from the city to assist in funding the project. The City Council authorized $420,000 in TIF. Again, council approved it on a vote 5-0. What would happen if the MHFA approved the project? They would come back before the EDA and City Council to go through that TIF process. They did receive funding from the county's Grow Fund. This will hopefully make their application to MHFA more competitive. Again, they're requesting support of that same TIF amount that we saw from them last year. And before you is our recommendation. With that, I can take any questions.
All right, EDA. Is there any questions at this time on this item for staff? All right, hearing none, I will mention, I know EDA member Eric, right? Is that okay?
Yes.
So, yep, Eric Deuce, do you want to?
Yeah, so it's due to the conflict of interest and that I work for Minnesota Housing, I will not vote or comment on this project.
Okay, so he'll be abstaining on this vote as we go through the process. So if there is no issues or concerns, I will then, I guess, from the EDA look for a motion.
We'll make a motion, recommendation to adopt the resolution authorizing support of tax increment financing for the proposed 54-unit multi-family development at 7601 79th Street South by Newport Midwest LLC.
And I believe that is EDA member Dan Myers. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second. Oh, gosh. Sorry.
Well, I could give it to
It doesn't
EDA
matter.
member this time.
Please do.
All right, there we go. So second by EDA member Spoot. Any further discussion? All right, Matt, do you want to do the roll on this one?
EDA President Bailey,
Aye.
EDA Member Carey,
Aye.
EDA Vice President Dennis,
Aye.
EDA Member Myers, EDA Member Myers, I'm sorry,
Aye.
EDA Member Smoot,
Aye.
and EDA Member Theos is abstaining.
There we go. All right, so the motion does carry. The next item under business items is 4.2, which is award of the Small Business Emergency Assistance Program grants. And again, Christine, we're all aware of this because we've been doing this now for the last month and a half or so. So Christine, you want to take us through?
Sure. Try to go kind of fast here on some of the initial slides. As the mayor stated, we've been through this process before. This began in May in terms of putting this program together. It is in regards to businesses that were impacted by the executive orders 04 and 08. We allocated $300,000 from the EDA Trust to start this program of grants up to $10,000. Some of the original eligibility guidelines located in Cottage Grove, operation 2 years, employees 3 to 25. The first round, we had 10 applications. One application was incomplete, and they never moved forward. We were concerned that maybe we weren't getting enough advertising out into the community during our second round, because that second round we only did have 5. So reached out to some of the businesses and kind of learned some of their concerns of why they weren't applying. So we did revise the guidelines to increase the number of full-time employees from a max of 25 to 70, increasing the annual gross income from $1 million to $3.5 million or less, reducing the number of years of operation from 1 year instead of 2. And then, as always, the federal and state funding, it's encouraged, but not required. So for this final round, we had 5 applications: Oasis Chiropractic, Vanguard's Family Meat, Integrity Dental Care, VFW Post 8752, and Pretty Nails. Again, Ellers and Associates, who's our third-party consultant in terms of reviewing the application, review the applications based on the revised guidelines from the previous 2 rounds. Before you is Ellers' recommendation for grants. Just to note a couple things in terms of Vanguard's, the entire business did not close as part of the executive orders 04 and 08. Only the deli portion of their business, which makes up 18% of the business. 82% of their business is meat processing, packaging, and sales, which was deemed an essential service and did not close under the governor's executive orders. In terms of Pretty Nails, the applicant applied after phase 1 and 2 of the governor's Stay Safe plan. So they were able to open and start working as of that June 1st date. It is true that they originally, as part of the executive orders 04 and 8, were closed. They also did not apply for state or federal funds. And then the VFW is a non-for-profit and generates income from gambling. So those are listed as ineligible uses in the grant program. The businesses will be required to provide a brief report in approximately 2 months to the EDA on how they use the funds for eligible expenses such as working capital, mortgage payments, utilities, property taxes, and other critical business expenses during COVID. And so with that, before you is a recommendation and open for questions.
All right. So is there any questions or comments regarding this particular item?
EDA President Bailey, I do have a comment.
Okay, EDA member Dennis.
Okay, as you're aware, I would like to take a moment today to advocate for the VFW to be included in this. but I know that that'll be a discussion. And so pending any other feedback from the EDA, I would be willing to make a motion to approve what we have here with the exclusion of the VFW to be held over for a discussion.
Okay, all right. So unless there's any other questions or comments, we do have a motion before us to approve all the business grants with the exception of the VFW at this point, which wasn't getting anything, but we can talk about that and have a separate vote. And that is a motion by EDA Vice President Dennis. So do I have a second?
I can second that.
Okay, second by EDA Member Hughes. Any further discussion? All right, Matt, do you want to do the roll?
EDA President Bailey,
Aye.
EDA Member Carey,
Aye.
EDA Vice President Dennis,
Aye.
EDA Member Myers,
Aye.
EDA Member Smoot,
Ryerson. Aye.
EDA Member Thewas.
Aye.
All right. And then EDA Member Dennis, you wanted to talk specifically about the VFW.
I did. Thank you, Mayor. So we've been working on this process here with a key goal of helping as many businesses here in our community as possible. And while the VFW is an organization that does act under a nonprofit status, they do, however, operate a commercial kitchen and bar out of that facility and employ a number of people. And when I look at the VFW and I think about the integral nature of what this organization means to our community, they're kind of a hub business here in Cottage Grove. And what I mean by that is that if you live here for any period of time, you will have no doubt had some experience in being involved with what they do. This is a place that holds innumerable cancer benefits, opportunities to support our veterans. They host the Lions Club twice a year, both for the Easter breakfast and the Santa breakfast. I've seen the fashion show from Stone Soup down there. I mean, anything that you can think of, these guys do in order to make a difference and help support our community. And being a member myself of the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon group, I can tell you that they are one of the primary funding sources that we have for Beyond the Yellow Ribbon. So while they act as nonprofit, they generate money through various means, and what ends up happening is they distribute that money back to the community in a very, very substantial way that helps to make our community be a much better place to live for many folks. So as I thought about this, one of the things that I did was to reach out to our staff and with the assistance of our city attorney, Corey Land, have them review the Small Business Grant Program guidelines as it related to the VFW. And our attorney suggested the following, since the purpose statement of the program indicates and gives the EDA the right to change eligibility criteria, which, as you know, we already have when we went from phase 1 to phase 2. So the recommended changes that were provided allow us to meet the language required for condition of approval, and it reads as follows. It's pretty simple. Under the section defined as eligibility, it would be section 7. Assistance cannot be provided to small businesses, that's the current language, or nonprofits that portion, those 4 words are scratched. It says that meet the following criteria. So the line would say assistance cannot be provided to businesses that meet the following criteria. The bullet point, nonprofit organizations, and there was some language added that states, except for nonprofits with a mission to support military veterans, which is a big part of what the VFW does. And then what we would be doing is also removing the other bullet point, which primarily generates income from gambling activities. So we're just simply taking that out. So since we've already amended the terms of the application process once, going from round 1 to 2, We have sought to improve this to allow more businesses to successfully apply. And since this is the very last round of this program, we have not gotten anywhere close to the allocated budget that we had. So to allow the VFW an opportunity to get a $10,000 grant to be used to cover fixed costs of business operations so that we can keep that vital business here in our community working for everybody. This is something that I feel very strongly in advocating for. So I would be seeking the support of my colleagues here on the EDA, because I believe in good faith. If we don't get this done here, it can't pass forward to the council. So that's my statement on this. I highly recommend that we consider support of them. And Mayor, I'll kick that back to you for any other considerations.
Okay. Thank you, EDA Vice President Dennis. Staff on this particular item, I guess I have two questions just for all of us here. One is, and some of this may or may not be known by the EDA, the CARES money that's coming from the state to the cities. Some of you may have seen out there that the allocation of the CARES money is about 2.8 million that's going to be coming to the city of Cottage Grove. Now it's very limited on what we can use that for. Staff, or do you know if the monies that we're expending for this program will be reimbursable?
Mayor, members of the EDA, our understanding from the guidelines that were provided to us is that these expenses to assist businesses, or the VFW in this case, would all be eligible expenses for reimbursement under that program.
Okay. All right. So just for the rest of the EDA, I know we've had a lot of changes, as you all are aware, and I wanted to say right off the bat, thank you to the EDA for jumping on a lot of these special meetings due to the fact that we've been trying to get the money out to the various businesses that have requested it and been approved through the process. It is my belief, after talking with EDA member Dennis and then also talking with staff, and now that we know in essence that the monies are going to be reimbursable, so we're actually not going to be out anything anyway, that this request would make sense. And I know Corey is on the call, so the language change that you have put in, Corey, would cover to not open this up to, churches and other types of nonprofits. Is that correct?
Your Honor, members of the council, we believe that the language that Councilmember Dennis, EDA Commissioner Dennis proposed is narrow enough that it would just apply to businesses, nonprofits that support military missions. So there could be other businesses of which we are unaware that would also be eligible to apply, but it's not broad enough to include all nonprofits.
Okay. And that was just for the rest of the EDA real quick. What we wanted to be careful with is that, if we opened it up too much, we could literally have, and nothing against our church, our different churches in our community, but they could also, depending on how the language was written, they could also be applying for this grant money too. And we wanted to be careful to really push hard towards one. I think our initial thought process was restaurants because of the severity of the situation, and that has expanded a little bit to include some of these other businesses, which I'm fine with because we want to keep our business community viable. So hearing that from our staff and the recommendation by EDA member Vice President Dennis, is there any other questions or comments on this topic from EDA members? All right, hearing none, then I guess EDA member Dennis, would you like to make some type of a motion?
Yes, I would. I'll make a very simple motion that the EDA approve a $10,000 small business assistance grant to the VFW of Cottage Grove.
I guess I had a quick question. In all other aspects, in terms of criteria, the VFW would have met those in terms of how long it's been in business, the revenue thresholds, et cetera, all the other things that were criteria.
EDA members, it's true. The only thing that the VFW did not meet is the two items that Vice President Dennis mentioned in terms of being a nonprofit, and then the income generated from gambling. Otherwise, yes, it would have qualified.
Okay. Was that what you needed, EDA member Carey?
Yes. Yep. Thank you.
Right. EDA member Dennis, can I ask you to do?
Yes. So I will include with that motion for the $10,000 grant, just as a continuance of it, that we would include the revised language that would support this particular application.
Okay. So is that our staff, are you good with that being?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure that we're good there to include that language. All right, so we have a motion by ED member Dennis. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, seconded by ED member Carey. Any further discussion? All right, hearing and seeing none, I will move to a roll call vote. Matt?
EDA President Bailey,
Aye.
EDA Member Carey,
Aye.
EDA Vice President Dennis,
Aye.
EDA Member Myers,
Aye.
EDA Member Smoot,
Aye.
EDA Member Thewis.
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. So thank you everybody for doing that. Next, just kind of moving along on our agenda, which is pretty much done. Public hearings, we do not have none this morning. 6 is other business, which is an EDA calendar. We don't have one before us this morning. 6.2 though is EDA comments and requests. Is there any out there?
I'll make a comment, Mayor, if I could.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Dennis.
Okay. So I just want to thank everybody that was part of the Small Business Assistance Program. Our staff put in a tremendous amount of work on this. It was really a fantastic project as far as the scope and the range and what we put together in a very short time. And I do very much appreciate everyone here on the EDA, as well as my council colleagues, for really helping to make a difference for our business structure here in our community. I have no doubt that when we have these companies coming forward to see us here in a short period of time, that they will have a lot of positive things to say, and I'm sure they'll be very grateful for the assistance that we gave to them. So this is something that I personally feel wonderful about, and I hope that everybody else feels that way too. It's a great thing to be able to come together, whether you're an elected official, a staff member, or a volunteer that works on a panel, to make a difference in our community. And we certainly have done that. So I thank everybody for their hard work and their support.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vice President Dennis. The only other, or is there any other council EDA member comments or requests? The only other item I just wanted to bring up, because I'm sure it may come up out there, I've seen a couple comments on social media, and that is about this CARES money. Just for the EDA to know, the CARES money, as I was alluding to a little bit earlier, is very, very narrow on what you can use that money for. And the money that's been given out to all the various cities around the state is specific to population. It's there. People may ask, why did Cottage Grove get 2.8 million or so, and then St. Paul Park got this amount? It's just a straight head count, if you will, that dictates that. The other thing, though, I wanted to mention that when we talk about being very narrow, the reason I'm bringing that up is, for example, one of the things that we've determined and found out is that, as I'm sure all of you, the EDA knows, the golf course was closed. The Eagles Bar and Grill was closed. The ice arena was closed. So the monies for this program does not cover lost revenue from these kind of venues. So anything that we did to generate revenue, though we lost revenue, just like these businesses that we're helping in our community, do not qualify for this CARES money. The CARES money is much more narrow than that. It's specific to product or items that we need to for safety. There is some things in there for public safety or our ambulance programs or systems and such. And then any types of grants or things that we've done to support our local business community, which is hence why I mentioned that comment earlier. So just so you know, if we aren't able to use all this money, the money does get, in essence, returned. So it goes to the cities to use in that narrow fashion. Whatever we don't use, it goes, I believe, back to our county. And then if our county can't use it or doesn't have the items or things that needed for the same thing, then it goes back to, I believe it's Ramsey County and Hennepin County for their Regions Hospital and Hennepin County Medical Center. From after that, I don't know where it goes from there. I'm not sure if it just goes back to the federal government or not, because this is federal money. So I thought I'd just share with you. So if people are asking you about the CARES money, I just wanted the EDA to be aware of kind of how this process works. And I guess the great news is, and we didn't do it for this purpose, so I think that's kind of cool for all of us. But you know, we put this program together for our small businesses to support our small businesses. I guess the fact is, in the end of all this, it looks like that money will be reimbursed. So it'll be money that I believe, and I'm sure all of you are believing too, is very well spent. So that is it. 6.3 is response to previous EDA comments. There are none. There is no workshop this morning, so we are at the point of an adjournment for the EDA. So I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
All right, we have a motion by EDA member Thews.
Second.
Second by EDA member Dennis. All right, roll call, Matt.
EDA President Bailey,
Aye.
EDA Member Carey,
Aye.
EDA Vice President Dennis,
Aye.
EDA Member Myers,
Aye.
EDA Member Smoot,
Aye.
EDA Member Thewas.
Aye.
Fantastic. Thanks all of you for jumping on the call this morning to approve those loans and such. And all of you have a great and safe 4th of July. Take care. Oh, and I guess I should mention, there is no EDA meeting. I forgot to mention that. I apologize. There is no EDA or EDA meeting in July. The next one will be August 11th. So unless staff throws something at us.
Not planning on it.
There we go. There we go. So take care, everybody. Have a great month.
Thank you.
To this then. So I'm going to go ahead and call the special meeting of June 30th, 2020 City Council meeting to order. First order of business is roll call. And Joe, I believe you're on the call, so you're going to do this one.
Councilmember Mills,
Here.
Councilmember Dennis,
Here.
Councilmember Thiede,
Here.
Councilmember Olson,
I'm here.
Mayor Bailey.
Here. All right. Next is 3 as our agenda items. We have 2 this morning. Both of them we just completed with the EDA, so perfect timing right along here. First one is Newport Midwest LLC project TIF performance or support, excuse me. And Christine Costello will take us through this one.
Good morning, Council. 2 of you will have to bear with me here for a repeat. Newport Midwest LLC came before the City Council in a workshop on May 15th of last year. They presented a proposal of a 54-unit multifamily development at 7601 79th Street. This is the vacant lot that's across from the library and kind of catty corner from the former City Hall site that will be Grove 80 Apartments. The proposal is for units at 30% and 50% of the area median income. And this is workforce housing that's usually defined as households earning 60 to 100% of AMI. A Twin Cities family of 4 in 2020, AMI is approximately $103,000. As part of their project financing, they're applying to MHFA for the housing tax credit. The housing tax credit program is for residential rental properties and offers investors a reduction in tax liability in exchange for capital to build affordable rental housing. Newport Midwest applied for the 9% tax credit program. This program is very competitive, and often applicants must apply multiple times to receive funding. They did begin their process of their application in 2019. As part of their application, they requested from City Council assistance in terms of TIF in the amount of $420,000 for their proposed development. In 2019, the council voted 5-0 to provide that support. Just to be clear, if the applicant receives funding from MHFA, they will have to come back before the EDA and City Council for that TIF process. So this is just in terms of that support for their application process. Newport Midwest did receive funding from the county's Grow Fund, so they feel with our support and the county's Grow Fund that will make their application much more appealing to MHFA. Again, they're requesting the same continued support in the TIF amount of $420,000. And with that is a recommendation before you, and I can take any questions.
All right, does council have any questions for staff at this point? All right, seeing none. It's been before us before, so we're basically re-upping it, if you will, for this possible proposal, which I think is a great idea for our community. So at this point, I'll look for a motion.
I would move to approve, Mayor.
Second.
Okay, so I think I got Councilmember Olson moved to approve and second by Councilmember Thiede. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. So, Joe, do you want to do the roll?
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. All right. Motion carries. Next on our agenda is B, which is a small business emergency assistance grants. And Christine, you'll take us through this one too.
Yes. So I'll kind of skip over these slides, but just a little bit of background. We're on our final round here. We began this process in May. We had allocated $300,000 from the EDA Trust to develop the small business grant program to provide grants up to $10,000. Some of the eligibility guidelines was they had to be located in Cottage Grove, in operation 2 years, 3 to 25 full-time employees, and make $1 million or less in annual gross income. In our first round, we had 10 applications. We did have one application that was incomplete, and they chose not to move forward. We were concerned that maybe we weren't getting enough advertising. So during the second round, we only received 5 applications. So we reached out to businesses as to maybe why they weren't applying, and learned that maybe it was the requirements in terms of years in business, employees, and the annual gross income. So during that second round, we revised the guidelines to increase the number of full-time employees to 70, increase the annual gross income to 3.5 million or less, only make business have to be in operation for a year, and then again, just encouraging that they apply for federal and state funding, but it wasn't required. So for this final round, we had 5 applications: Oasis Chiropractic, Bongards Family Meat, Integrity Dental Care, VFW Post 8752, Pretty Nails. And then as the previous 2 round, Ellers and Associates, who served as our consultants, reviewed the applications based on those revised guidelines. So before you was their recommendation for grants. And just to delve into a few of them, in terms of Bongards, the entire business did not have to close as part of the Executive Order 04 and 8. Only the deli portion, which makes up 18% of the business, had to close as part of the executive orders. The rest of their business was deemed essential by the governor, and that 82% of their business comes from meat processing, packaging, and sales. So that was able to remain open. Pretty Nails, the applicant applied after the phase 2 and 3 of the governor's Stay Safe plan. So they have been able to be open already for a little bit. They were previously closed during the initial governor's orders of 04 and 8. They also did not apply for state or federal funds. And then in terms of VFW, on our current guidelines, they're listed as a non-for-profit, and they also generate some of their income from gambling, which were considered ineligible uses of the grant program. The grantee does need to provide a brief report to the EDA in roughly 2 months on how they use those eligible expenses, which can be used for wages, mortgage and rent payments, utilities, property taxes, and other critical business expenses. So before I use a recommendation, previous to this meeting, the EDA did have a meeting and did provide some alternative recommendations. And maybe I'll turn that over to council to discuss further, and then let Councilmember Dennis share the amendment he added to the EDA agenda. And with that, I can take questions.
So council, you can see what the recommendation is before you with all of the items. Councilmember Dennis did want to add the VFW with some specific language. So Councilmember Dennis, would you like to speak to the council on that one?
I would. Thank you, Mayor, and good morning to my council colleagues. This morning, I will be asking for your support and that we advocate for getting the VFW onto this list to receive a $10,000 grant. Yes, the VFW is an organization that is charitable in nature. Yes, they do have gambling proceeds. Yes, they do have a commercial kitchen and a commercial bar that generates profit for the organization. They are perhaps one of the greatest organizations in terms of dollars that they inject back into the communities to support a wide array of causes. And all of us, I know, are very, very familiar with them. And so I did an entire articulation with the EDA. I will say that we did receive a unanimous vote from the EDA to add them in. And what I had done is I reached out to our city attorney, and she provided some really good language that we can use to meet condition of approval. And one of the things that I will point out is that when you go back and you take a look at the Small Business Assistance Program, there was an indication in there that the EDA reserved the right to change the eligibility criteria. And as you know, we have already done that from phase 1 to 2, which allowed us to include more businesses into the matrix. So the changes of language are very simple and very straightforward. and they would come under the eligibility section, specifically section number 7, which states that assistance cannot be provided to businesses. The original language indicates or nonprofits that meet the following criteria. So we struck out the word nonprofits. So the line would read, assistance cannot be provided to businesses that meet the following criteria. But then there's 2 bullet points that have been amended. The first one says nonprofit organizations, and the language that was added was except for nonprofits with a mission to support military veterans. And then the second piece that was changed was to completely remove the line that indicated primarily generates income from gambling activities. So with the change in scope of the language as provided, what it does is it provides us with a narrow scope of application for which this can be brought forward. Again, when I look at the VFW, they're a hub of our community, involved with tremendous things affecting untold numbers of people in positive ways. And they have sustained some very serious losses by virtue of the fact that they were forced to shut down their restaurant and their bar operations and all the other things that they did here during the time of the initial COVID shutdown. So again, this passed through unanimous with the EDA. And so what I would do is suggest, that as a separate motion, obviously we approve what we have here, but then as a secondary motion, like I did with the EDA, was to make a motion that we would include them and provide a $10,000 grant, incorporating the revised language that we received from the attorney to make sure that everything was covered properly. So Mayor, I'll kick it back to you unless there's anything else you think I should add to that.
No, so I think before we move for any motions or questions from the council, 2 things for everybody. So what we'll do is we'll follow the process. We'll approve the current recommendations that are before you on the screen here. And then Councilmember Dennis, if you will, would make a motion with the inclusion of the new language for the second piece, which would be the VFW. For the council, I'll mention the same thing I did to the EDA. Though it wasn't our intent at the beginning of this program, our intent at the beginning of this program was to make sure that we supported all these local businesses. Matter of fact, specifically, I think really was mainly for our restaurants that were closed and significantly hurt. Though we're able to give, as you can see here, multiple other grant opportunities. And we were doing this through the EDA Trust Fund. Since that has happened, as some of you may or may not be aware, the federal government did provide money to states, which recently the governor has provided funding. And in our particular case, the city of Cottage Grove, we're going to get approximately $2.8 million of the CARES Act money. And that money, by the way, is based directly off of the number of people. So it's a certain dollar amount per person. So if you do get questioned, which I have just in general, but it's all good. What can you spend that money on? Just so all of us are on the same page, you can spend that money on programs like we're doing to support our local businesses. However, we can't spend that money on lost revenue. For example, the golf course, the Eagles Bar and Grill, the park buildings, the ice arena, you name it. So though it wasn't our intent at the beginning of all this, it is our belief now, the way the language is written, that the money that we're spending for this program, we were just doing it through our EDA Trust Fund, we're actually going to get reimbursed. We believe we'll be reimbursed for this program. So I guess in the end, that's great news for all of us. We're being able to support our local businesses and still get reimbursed from federal monies that are going to be flowing into the city. Again, just so the council is aware, if we don't spend the 2.8 million, whatever is remaining, because it is very narrow in scope on what you can spend the money on, that money will be returned, I believe, to the county. And then the county, if they can't, because of their narrow scope too, can't spend it, it goes to both Hennepin County and Ramsey County specifically for their hospitals, which would be Regions or Hennepin County Medical Center. So I just thought I would share that little bit of information. So beyond all the great stuff we're doing to try to support our local business communities and such through the COVID situation, there is going to be an opportunity for us to get some of this money back. So just wanted to throw that in there for you. So at this point, does any council members have any questions on the initial? Yes, Councilmember Thiede.
So the first round, everybody got 10,000, right?
Correct.
Okay, so now this round we did some exceptions because of how we had this written up. And so I guess my question would be, are those like bond guards and pretty nails, you know, are they going to say, well, you went and changed the requirements for one organization, why wouldn't you do it for us? Are we gonna see any issues for people coming up and saying, well, you know, we're in the business too? I mean, I guess I'm just looking to make sure that we're not setting a precedence and having other people then organizations come and say, well, hey, you changed it for them, why not us?
Mayor and council members, in terms of the criteria, in terms of the VFW, I think that with the exception language, in terms of the nonprofit, you know, stating that except for nonprofits with a mission to support military veterans, it does keep it fairly in sync in terms of just military veterans. In terms of if there's any other organizations out there with a brick and mortar, I do not know, not aware of others who could apply. This is the last round. We do not plan to extend it past these 5 applications. I know in the first round, one of the businesses, Ellers, suggested a reduction, but the EDA and council approved 10,000. Originally, they were recommended for 6,000.
So there's no, you know, and I guess I'm just saying that there's other nonprofits that are serving, you know, people and so forth. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here, and in terms of others that are going to say, you know, and mind you, I believe that supporting the military is good, but I also believe in supporting others and so forth that have very good causes. And so I guess I just want to make sure that that we're not shooting ourselves in the foot. So I guess if everybody else feels that there's not going to be any issues with this, then I guess I'm okay with it.
Well, I think it's a great question, Councilmember Thiede, and then Councilmember Russell, I'll get you 1 second here. Two things. One is the difference in the amounts here based on very specific times of, like, for example, with Bongars, and I think Christine Costello broke it out. Part of their business really wasn't closed, and so we did make a little bit of an adjustment there because they were still open, but there's a piece of their business that wasn't open, and so that's what we're helping fund based on a percentage, which is kind of what they're doing in this particular case. As it relates to the nonprofits, totally understand what you're saying. My concern initially was, to your point, I mean, could this open it up to like churches who have, you know, pastors and employees that are working in them? Because we've narrowed the scope on the process in this one particular case, and that I think we'll be fine there. It hasn't been something, we haven't had churches reach out to us, or me, or anybody else for that matter, that have requested funding on that particular case. But I would, I think unless something changes before the end of the year, which who knows what's going on with COVID right now, it seems like it's not so much Minnesota, but elsewhere it seems to be revving back up, unfortunately. You know, what programs will we need to relook at later this year, possibly? I don't know. So we'll have to see how that goes. So at this point, but just put in perspective, the initial recommendations, Councilmember Thiede, would not include the VFW. And then there'll be specific language that Councilmember Dennis will put forth that was provided by the attorney that would indeed be almost very specific to this one particular brick and mortar location. Okay.
All right.
Councilmember Olson.
Thanks, Dave. I'm wondering, were you trying to suggest that we do 10,000 for all of the applicants? I wasn't quite clear if that's maybe what you were trying to say, because we did that for everybody in the last round, or were you not suggesting that?
Well, that's a possibility. I mean, right there, people are going to say, hey, Bongards might say, well, only, 18% of my business was the deli stuff that closed, but did they take a hit on everything else? Should that be different? Pretty Nails, I mean, that's pretty close to the 10,000, but and on that one, you said they took advantage of some of the state funding, state or federal funds. Is that the?
They did not. No, they did not apply for state and federal funds. Pretty Nails did not. Other businesses did apply. They did not.
But I think the reason it was 8,500, if I recall, on that one is because they were able to open from when they applied.
Correct.
So it was the time they were closed.
Yeah, because they submitted their application on June 17th, and they had already been able to be open for a few weeks. They didn't apply during the first round when they received notification of the program early on. They had waited.
Okay, so didn't the VFW actually open up with an outdoor patio and everything a week or two ahead of, and opening up potentially other stuff, or?
That is true. The VFW did, like Las Margaritas and some of the others, have their expanded outdoor patio when the governor allowed that additional 50%. But they were closed previously, their food aspect.
Okay.
Mayor, members of the council, I think what Councilmember Thiede may be struggling with is the fact that in our first round, we did have a nail salon who was recommended at a lower amount than 10,000, was granted 10,000. So there is the potential, if council desires to be consistent with that previous action, that Pretty Nails could be given the 10,000 to be consistent with that original action. I think the situation with Bongards Meat is unique because their business was not fully closed under the governor's order, but only 18% of their business. So it would seem appropriate to not award them the entire amount due to that fact, because I would think other businesses then could cry foul if a full grant was granted to them, given their situation. So just to clarify, I think what I was trying to understand between the dialogue there.
Yes, thank you. That does kind of clear it up a little bit. So
I guess from a staff standpoint, because I know the EDA approved the 8,500, if we were to make that adjustment for the nail salon from 8,500 to 10,000 on that particular one, because it's unique, are we okay to do that without having to go back to the EDA? Good. Okay. All right. So basically what I'm seeing and hearing maybe is there is a uniqueness to the Bongards Meat situation, but to the nail salon, because we did provide a full 10,000 funding to the previous nail salon that applied, that there might be a desire by council to go from the 8,500 to the 10,000 for Pretty Nails. So if there is no other council comments or questions at this point, I would be interested to entertain an approval. And if there is a desire to change the dollar amount, for example, for Pretty Nails, please make that as part of your motion.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we approve the recommendation as written, but for Pretty Nails, which we would approve at $10,000.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Olson, second by Councilmember Thiede. Any further discussion? Okay, Joe, do you want to do the, did I hear anybody? I'm sorry. Okay, Joe, would you please do the roll?
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. And then Councilmember Dennis, you wanted to do, I'll call it an addendum as relates to the VFW. Do you want to take this one?
It's my pleasure to do so. Mayor, I'll make motion that we approve one small business emergency assistance grant of $10,000 to the Cottage Grove VFW, including the amended language provided by the attorney identifying the approved use.
All right. So I have a motion by Councilmember Dennis, second by Councilmember Olson. Again, any further discussion? All right.
One
Councilmember Thiede.
One quick question. So was the VFW during this period of time, were they completely closed, or were they able to do anything to get funds?
They were, I mean, I can even answer. I think Jennifer was about to. They were completely closed.
Okay, so there was
even the revenue.
There's no cash flow revenue for any of their activity prior to the virus.
No, matter of fact, even their banquet facility, if you will, the renting and that was closed, and their revenue is generated, as you saw, by gambling proceeds, and they can even do that. So
okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep, you got it. All right, so I have a motion and a second. No other discussion. Joe, do you want to do the roll?
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. Motions carry. All right, I believe that is it. So we're looking for a motion to adjourn, council.
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion by Councilmember Thiede.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Mills. All right, go ahead, Joe, one last time.
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. So thank you, everybody. Have a great 4th of July holiday, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for popping on this morning.
Hey, everyone.